Another thing, we will have a presentation on it, is the endowment that we have been working on. Commissioner Schaefer, Commissioner Musich, and myself have been working on, and a presentation was made, and Superintendent Bangor and I were at that. And we are going to be sharing with all of you our funding categories that will be going forward. So my hope is that within the next few months, that will be activated and we can start putting monies into our endowment to support our system. The next thing is the Blue Line. As of June, I think it's the 11th, they will be releasing the draft environmental impacts statement. And we will then have, I believe it's 45 days, and the city will have 45 days for municipal consent. Our authority in that area is what's called 4F, and what is it? 106? Yeah, 106. The 4F is environmental. What is the environmental impact? But I completely forgot, Commissioner Thompson, I forgot about the fact that 106 is about the historic impact. So it's something that we'll have to be studying very intensely to be able to weigh in on how that is. That is the line that basically is going to be going along Broadway. And then the last thing, if some people have not read the news, we are number 2, thanks to the Trust for Public Land. I'm very honored to have that again. It is a data-driven award, and I believe that periodically they add new things to keep raising the bar for us. And so the fact that we've taken on second really makes me very proud. And I appreciate all the work from everybody in making that happen. So with that, then I will move then to our consent agenda. Somebody would like to move that?
I can move resolutions 2024-104, 111, 112, 100, 110, 113, and 105 as a slate.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify, oh, excuse me. Yes.
President
Secretary
Forney, I
Emanuel.
just want to confirm that 110 was in that.
What is listed in the agenda?
It is, yep.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carried. Okay, we will move then to the Planning Committee.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, there's nothing to move.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. And as far as the Administration and Finance, our
Take it
chair
away.
is missing. Who is?
I got it.
Charles has
Oh,
got it.
Charles. Commissioner Rucker, if you would like to move your resolutions from the Admin and Finance.
I'll move Resolution 2024-96. Resolution amending the 2024 capital improvement program for multiple regional parks and trails in order to simplify and streamline the grant execution process with the Metropolitan Council without modifying overall funding amounts nor timelines.
Second.
Any discussion on that item? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries.
I'll move Resolution 2024-97, resolution approving an agreement with Green Cities Accord to collaborate on tree planting project, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Planting Project 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That action carries, I believe. On to our next agenda.
I'll move Resolution 2024-99, resolution approving a project implementation agreement with Green Cities Accord, MPRB Planting Project 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That action carries as well. On to Oh, our next, which is our or unfinished business, excuse me, which is a study item. And just for people to know, we do have our open time at 5:30, and we also then have a first hearing at 5:45.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. As perhaps a little teaser in the original remarks from President Forney, we do have a presentation tonight on the MPRB Endowment Project. This is a project that comes out of your 2022 goal setting and your budget process. So at that time, you had set forward kind of three funding pursuits. One of them was stormwater fee, another one was parkways, and the third one was endowments. Since that time, we have had a commissioner/staff team working on all three of those, and the one that is specific for endowments includes President Forney, Commissioner Schaefer, Commissioner Musich, Superintendent Bangora, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, Director Wiseman, and myself. This group has taken this work on with a lot of diligence, including doing interviews with 4 different organizations in the pursuit of better understanding endowments and being prepared to actually start working the way into an endowment relationship. So that group met with St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation, met with the Minneapolis Foundation, met with the University of Minnesota, as well as the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. And we do have several members of the Minneapolis Parks Foundation here tonight, in particular because the Minneapolis Parks Foundation is the group we've been working with most closely over about the last 7 to 8 months to be able to form an agreement and to come to the point of hopefully in not too distant future bring something in front of the board. So starting in October, we had a project goal to work with the Minneapolis Parks Foundation to determine the feasibility of working together to create an endowment. This group has met 8 times. The Parks Foundation team includes Sarah Dunaway, Karen Birkland, Jasmine Russell, Jennifer Downham. Several are here tonight, as well as Jossie. I saw Jossie Hale in the audience here today as well. So it's been a really good, productive 8 meetings, I would say. 8 feels like a lot, but we had to start from a spot of first understanding which each organization's needs would be. We had both kind of independently identified the need for endowment, and then we had to come together to find out where those spaces actually best benefited each other. We are very close to having a draft agreement. We're, I would say, very close to having a draft agreement. And we have been working in particular on 3 categories of funding that this endowment would actually provide funding to. So before we go much further, let's just make sure we're all on the same page of what an endowment is. An endowment is where donors provide money into basically a restricted account, and then you don't take off of that principal, you take off of what you earn out of that endowment. So it's intended to be a more sustainable, more perpetual type of relationship. So it is something that, from at least a staff perspective, we think could eventually fund staffing and other types of ongoing expenses. There's one of the main pushes that has made this endowment consideration something of interest. But it requires quite a bit of work. It requires fundraising, it requires donor management, and it requires investment management. It also requires a pretty high level of reporting. We have been very fortunate this process. Sarah Dunaway from the Parks Foundation, in her non-foundation, Parks Foundation life, this is the work she does. She works very closely with different organizations to create and monitor kind of the legal side of endowments. So we've had the great benefit of her knowledge coming into this process. At this point, and I will trust President Forney, you will just cut me off and we will start up again at the other side of this. At this point, when we look at the draft that we're at, basically the Minneapolis Parks Foundation would be agreeing to be doing the endowment and raising the funds for it. These funds would be restricted for specific purposes, and there would be annual distributions to those purposes. The board would actually allocate the funds into those purposes through its budget. The foundation wouldn't have a determination of exactly how those funds were used within your budget as long as you were within those specific purposes. There's an intent to create within the agreement a collaborative oversight committee, a joint endowment committee, and then the draft agreement also lays out responsibility of the Parks Foundation around raising funds, managing investments, administration, and reporting. The funding categories tends to be one of the most interesting parts that I find that we talked about as a group. And right now, they're really falling into three categories: historic infrastructure, regional park and trail care and maintenance, and natural resources. Within the endowment, the donors wouldn't be able to restrict those specific locations. They might be able to signal to us which of those three categories are most important to them, but they wouldn't be able to restrict. And when it came again to the Minneapolis Park Board, as long as you were spending it in those categories, it would be managed through your budget process. Just checking to see where I'm at here. So
Okay.
this might be a good moment before I get into the funding categories for
Okay.
you, and then we'll come back to those.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider an item previously voted on this evening. We forgot there was a staff amendment that was suggested. So I would like to move to reconsider Resolution 2024-113. This is the resolution accepting the Minneapolis Foundation anonymous donations, yada, yada. It's actually striking anonymous donations, and then in the, sorry. We need to vote on
Yes,
that first, then I'll
second.
tell you what it is.
Yeah, first of all, do we have a second?
So sorry about
A
that.
second.
Okay. Oh,
It is debatable, but there's no lights.
okay, so do we need to have a
You
action?
need a vote now
Okay,
on the motion to
we're doing a
reconsider.
vote to reconsider. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries.
Lovely.
Carry
Now
on.
I'd like to make a motion to amend this item. The amendment is as submitted to us and published on Tuesday, to strike anonymous donations from the header, and then in the seventh whereas clause, to strike anonymous donors and replace it with fund holders at. And then also in the first resolve clause to strike, to add the donations after commissioners accepts, it would say the donations through donor advised funds at the Minneapolis Foundation, striking anonymous donations.
Second
Okay.
that.
So, any discussion on that? Any discussion? Commissioner Menz, you just have a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a second because I think that this is actually really significant that we secured this money, and I just wanted to thank the work of the superintendent and the foundation for really trying to respond to constituent concerns and find a way to support some retroactive relief. I mean, it's really kind of incredible the amount of work that this organization and the leadership has done to secure funds to mitigate the EAB issue on the north side. So I really just want to highlight, and I'm sorry that we missed it in the consent agenda, but thank goodness, Commissioner Musich, for motioning to reconsider, because this is a significant issue, or a significant win for the citizens. So thank you very much, President Superintendent Bangora.
Seeing no other lights, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. So, do we need to, we don't need to
That's
do any
good.
more
We're good
action?
now.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, so then I will move into open time. Perfectly timely there. Okay, thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with a time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others here to speak. and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. Two types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all are pending litigation and personnel issues. Please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. This board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. And we have 16 speakers, so I'm going to allow 1 minute each. And hopefully I can read people's writing. Diane Posley. And then after that is Anishka Jayaswal. Sorry. Diane, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Please come forward.
And it's Diane Presley, like Elvis kind of.
Oh, my apologies.
No, you're fine. It's my writing.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I wanted to more or less speak on the self-fulfillment youth would feel with being able to sign up in parks for, teams and whatever could be there, like arts and crafts and things of that nature. The pride and self-fulfillment that youth person would feel by participating in things of that nature. And the youth would not have to stand outside or be somewhere that is not structured. And also the friends and things that they would make. And I would say be trusted with staff that we know are good for that person to be with while the parents aren't home, or even if the parent is home. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Anishka, and then Chelsea, I think it's Tladbliss. Sorry, pronunciation.
Am I good?
Yep.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. My name is Chelsea Globitz at 312 Central University Avenue, Southeast, Minneapolis. I'm the president at the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation of the AFL-CIO, and we represent workers all throughout Minneapolis and the western suburbs, including the great frontline staff that you have here at the Minneapolis Park Board. And because we have this global position, we are kind of seeing on the front lines the crisis that's unfolding for our frontline and our public sector workers, both in cities and counties and school districts across our region. And even here, nobody is able to escape from what's happening right now in this economy for our frontline public sector workers. And the places where we're seeing success and progress is where the communities are, the employer is coming together with the staff to create creative strategies that are worker-led. And we're really encouraging you to do that here. You have an opportunity to do that with this current contract that you're bargaining. And as the elected leaders, we need you to be the folks who are supporting that this bargaining process happens in good faith. Thank you for your time.
Is Anishka here? Anishka? Then the next person is Philip Gray. And then after that is John Elwood or Elwork. I'm not sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. My thunder was kind of stolen because you tabled the Boys and Girls Club situation, but I still wanted to talk with you. I just want to use my 47-page PowerPoint in all of my infographics. So my first question to you is kind of rhetorical. Have you ever been to the Southside Phelps Boys and Girls Club? You don't have to answer. I want you to answer that for yourself. And I guess what I was going to say is, finally, if ever there was a place, if ever there was a time, if ever there was a group of people who have been fighting and maintaining after trauma and pain in their community, this is the group, this is the time, this is the place. We need your grace, we need your love, we need your introspection, and also your inspection of this site. We need your help to keep this vital, foundational, and fundamental community resource open for all the kids in this community. Help this community, don't hurt or harm this community anymore. That is now, do this now. Take this off the table, provide the space with the dollars for the community that it needs. Dollar up, fund Phelps, strengthen Southside, and come to the celebration and celebrate a great place and come to the picnic for our kids.
So then John Elwood, I think it is.
Elward. John Elward, worked in forestry since
And then-
'99. I
and-
love it. I live in South Minneapolis. I've lived there since 1985. I take care of trees for all of you guys. And I hire, I'm out there chanting, like, who does the work? Well, Al, you do work. And Jennifer, you do work. And Ralph, you do work. We all do work. But we're busting butts out there. And every year, it doesn't quite meet inflation. And it's like we're not being valued. And that makes it hard for people. You want morale. That's what makes us work out there. And I like that we are well funded. We have good equipment. But morale is the key thing. People go the extra way if they have morale. Why you get morale maybe is giving us a little bit more dough. Make us not have to fight and come here and yell about it. Because that seems foolish. Give a reasonable contract at the beginning so we can move on, so we don't have to keep doing this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to walk on the street in front and yell at you guys. Come on.
The next person is Sam Henson, and after that is Molly Hillenbrand.
Good evening. My name is Sam Henson. I live out in 2130 Stillwater Avenue East, St. Paul. I'm born and raised in Minneapolis. I can't afford to live in Minneapolis anymore. That was the cheapest house we could find. I've worked at the park board since June of 2022. I'd applied multiple times. It was a career I always saw myself in. Every week, I depend on overtime. We were out last night till 6 p.m. chasing storm damage to make the streets safe in the rain, and it was pretty rough. We do that regularly. And then throughout the rest of the year, right now, I work evenings and weekends every single week, subcontracting, doing tree work additional to that, just to make our ends meet. My wife works 3 jobs. All anyone's asking for is a fair, respectful contract. City of St. Paul just hired a friend of mine. They're starting him $35 an hour to do the same job that I do here. That's over $5 an hour more than I make after 2 years at the park board. Anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Molly, are you here? And then after that is Keurig Sarbacker.
I was hoping for 2 minutes, but I'll try to race through this. Good evening, Commissioners, Superintendent. My name is Molly Hillenbrand. I'm a park keeper here, a union steward for Local 363, and a lifelong resident of South Minneapolis, currently residing in the Minnehaha neighborhood. A little bit more about me. I started as a seasonal park keeper back in the summer of 2006, working my way through college. Despite receiving my bachelor's degree in health and exercise science, something happened to me along the way. I fell in love with the Minneapolis parks and the work we do, and decided to make it a career. While working here and having 2 other jobs at the time, I was able to purchase my house in 2014 and have taken a lot of pride in owning a home. However, in recent years, after getting to top step park keeper and only receiving minute costs of living increases, the dream of owning a home seems less and less sustainable. My greatest fear is no longer being able to afford my house in the city I work in. Every year I get statements in the mail about increases to my property taxes, and with every bill lately, it's the same thing. Costs are going up, and what we've been offered so far in negotiations isn't going to cut it. I saw Mayor Fry in the news just yesterday talking about the city's budget shortfalls in the coming years and how most likely property taxes are going to go up even more. Raising property taxes isn't the answer. I know some of you commissioners have acknowledged that openly. It's time to trim the fat. It's time to honor your commitment on that back wall to cultivate a thriving workforce. I've been here a long time, half my life in fact, and we're falling behind. You offer us hats and hot dogs, but hats and hot dogs aren't going to pay my bills or theirs. Thank you for your time.
I'm sorry. I'm from the north side. I didn't let you know.
Thank you. Keurig, and then the next person is going to be Matt, I think it's Gassman.
Good evening, President Forney, Commissioners. My name is Carrick Sarbecker. I am an employee of Minneapolis Park and Rec Board in the Forestry Department. As you've heard from my coworkers, we take a lot of pride in what we do. We planted 9,800 trees, 9,800 trees this year alone, and now we have to maintain them. And I take a lot of pride in doing that. I live on the south side of Minneapolis on 41st in Chicago, and I want to stay there, but my rent is increasing every year. My lease is up at the end of June, and I can't find an affordable place, an affordable apartment. Buying a house is not an option for me and for a lot of my coworkers. It's really unfortunate while I'm looking at apartments that Minneapolis Park Board employees cannot afford to live in this city. You've heard from Sam, you've heard from other people. Please, all we're asking for is a fair contract. We've been working for almost 6 months without it, and we're coming here because we have to. You can do something about that, please.
So Matt, and then after that is Alice Emery Ferguson.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Matt Gassman. I live at 580 County Road B2 East in St. Paul. I'm here today to advocate for a contract that addresses the historic inflation we've seen the last few years. As one member put it to me, a few years ago I was barely thriving, but now I feel like I'm barely surviving. This condition is hurting Minneapolis parks. We are struggling to fill positions or retain talent. We're going the wrong direction. So I'd like you all to consider a world where we put employees first, where you put people from number 9 or 8 or wherever we are as a thriving workforce, put them number 1, because I guarantee you the rest of those core values take care of themselves. I'm here for it. I'm ready to dig into this stuff, but we need you with us. We have a lot of members who have a hard time seeing how you guys are focused on anything other than headlines, customer, calls from constituents and ribbon cuttings. I see the values of this organization. I think that can't be true. But if I'm going to be honest, we need, the people in this room, we're ready to write our own headline. We're ready to get the phone ringing off the hook. So we need you to step up and give us a contract that addresses this inflation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alice Emery Ferguson. I live here in North Minneapolis. And I just want to say, I used to be one of you guys. I quit that job to come see what it's like. My husband worked for the city for 35 years. He's retired now. They said I couldn't do it. I proved them wrong. I just celebrated 11 years with the park board. The thing about it is, on your side of the table, you make your own decisions. On this side of the table, these guys stand for something. And I want to be a part of that, because I never have been. I was on your side. So by me being on this side and looking around, all these different people who trying to stand for the same thing, I just think as people, like I was, that you are, should listen.
Being it's 5:45, we have a public hearing for the naming of the CPRO site for parking Monarcha. The unfortunate thing, though, is that we are missing one of our at-large commissioners, and I'm not sure if we need to proceed or we don't with the public hearing as a result. If somebody wants to advise. Excuse me?
Ask if there's anyone here to speak to it. Ask if there's anyone here to speak to the item.
Is anybody here to speak to that item? about the public hearing about the naming of a park at the CPRO site. Is anybody here to speak to that? Not seeing anybody, and being that we can't proceed unless we have the 3 at-large commissioners plus the district commissioner, and we are missing the at-large commissioner. Oh, sorry, Secretary Ringel, or?
President Forney, my request would be that after open time, we open the public hearing up and then we leave it open through to the next meeting so that we have an opportunity for all commissioners to be here before we close it.
Okay, we will respect that, I appreciate it. So we will continue then with the open time. The next person is Tommy McBrayer, and after that is Lane Brown. If Tommy is here, come forward. Tommy's not here, how about Lane Brown? And then after that is Dominique Nellam.
Good evening, y'all. Happy Wednesday. We are 3 days from the 4th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, and I'll be transparent. I can feel it in my body. Can y'all? I know this room can. I know a lot of us are still dealing with the after effects. We're still looking for that green space to relax in and learn how to breathe together in. And I would love for y'all to join us. Come to Phelps and see what it's about. At this moment, our community feels abandoned. They feel like this park's just gonna close. Y'all are gonna defund it like the rest of the good in our community has been defunded. And that's not what our community needs. We can do better. We have an opportunity to create a legacy together of good, of growth, of green, with the Boys and Girls Club at Phelps too. We can handle full-time staffing there on y'all's part. I know the Boys and Girls Club is paying $23,000 to be de facto staff for y'all. They're not MPRB staff, and they don't want to be. Please provide us something more than you've provided since 2008, is what I heard. I'll leave it at that.
And I apologize. What was your name? Are you Lane? Thank you, Lane. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm going to go back. Is Tommy here, McBrayer? And then Dominique, eh?
Thank you.
Is Dominique here? Is Dominique here? Okay, then Mike Tate.
How y'all doing? So how are the children? I pulled some off the People's website, and I'm gonna read it to you. The superintendent is appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and provides leadership, vision, and direction to the park board service areas and implements board policy. The superintendent works with the board and leadership staff to craft a strategic financial planning objective. The superintendent provides leadership to the staff of approximately 630 full-timers and 1,500 temporary employees. He oversees, or she oversees, an annual operating capital budget of almost $160 million a year, and serves as an ambassador to the community and other governmental agencies. The superintendent's office is responsible for executive management of highly diverse services and operations of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. The superintendent's office oversees park police, community connections, and violence prevention, and communication and marketing. I pulled this off the People's site. The People's site, which is the site that you set up for the people. When are we gonna get there? The policy driven behind this organization. Policy driven around recreation, policy driven around violence prevention, holding people accountable for what they're getting paid for. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to go back first to Anishka and Tommy, if either one of them are here. Otherwise, we've got Rex Euclid and Pierce Hastings, if Rex wants to come forward.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Rex Unziker. I live in Minneapolis, north side of Minneapolis. I'm a seasonal worker here at the Parks District. I am having issues with our contracts here because I feel as it is not very fair. It is very discerning to many young people that want to start working here. The seasonals are not being hired because of low wages and the overworking that is happening with these low wages. It is just not very enticing to come and learn how to take care of our parks nor just spend time outside. I need this job to pay for college. I'm currently working through. I go to school over in Wisconsin, and it's not very cheap. I have to pay out of pocket, and it is completely up to me to put myself through school. And with this job, I can barely make a dent in the debt that I already owe, including the money that I have to pay for this next semester. There's no benefits included in this job. It is, you go to work, you get paid a minimal amount, you go to school, and there's nothing more. I can't do healthcare, I can't do anything like that. It's a figure it out mindset. I am given this task to do, and there's not the proper tools to do it all the time, and a lot of it's just kind of like tough luck. Get it done as well as you can, but you're still going to be judged, and you will be, judged based off the work that you do. And then my final point is the lack of advancement and training in this job. Our training consists of a minute or 5 minutes, a minute to 5 minutes, depending on, if it's a big heavy mower that could go kill somebody or a weed whacker. It's very minimal, and it really offers no in-depth as to what that machine could really do. And there's no advancement other than like $1 or $2 raise in pay. So, thank you.
Pierce Hastings.
Good evening. The Park Board Carbon Offset Program, which 20 minutes ago was just renewed for another year, is actively making climate change worse. In allowing polluting companies to purchase trees that have already been planted in past years instead of reducing their emissions, and then not using the money generated to plant any new trees, this decision is actively adding more carbon to the atmosphere. This is wild. On the surface, the image is that you are taking this money to plant new trees, but not a single cent of this money so far has been used on planting new trees. Additionally, we now have access to the tree inventory, and for the trees you did plant, North Minneapolis has received the least or second least trees every single year, which directly violates the promise made with city forest credits. Basically, you are letting this state's biggest polluters launder their reputation through the Park Board. These companies are among the architects of climate collapse. Winslow Capital, the third biggest buyer of these credits, is a $22 billion institutional-focused hedge fund with holdings in companies with some of the poorest environmental records. When Uber was possibly going to leave Minnesota, Winslow sold 40% of their holdings in Uber and replaced it with an 110,000% increase in the largest oil company in the world, Schlumberger, and then bought back Uber and sold these holdings after they knew Uber would be staying. To those of you who voted to let these companies continue polluting at the same level, but still greenwash their reputation, you are complicit with climate collapse. Ask yourself if you are acting boldly for our climate future, like your strategic plan says you are. Also, I stand with the union and the Boys and Girls Club.
So once again, I will ask if Anishka is here, Tommy is here, or Dominica. Not seeing any of them arising, I will then close our open time, and then I will then move to our public hearing, of which we will have a presentation. Is that what you're suggesting? Okay, we will then have the presentation of our naming, the beginning of our naming process for the CPRO site.
Who are we? 363. Who are we? 363. Who are we? 363. What do we want? Fair contract. What do we want? Now. Fair contract. Now. 363. 363. 363. 363. 363.
Thank you, President Forney. Commissioners, the public hearing that you have in front of you tonight is for the CPRO site, and it's a naming nomination that actually came from the board, and it is to rename that site to Parque Monarca. Again, it is the CPRO site. It was submitted through board action on December 6th. It's Resolution 2023-247, and that resolution also rescinded a previous name that had been recommended for this site and approved by the board. So it rescinded Midtown Park and replaced it with Parque Monarca. The nominator who brought that piece into board consideration was Commissioner Alper. We have our standard nomination communication process. So we'd provided information about this nomination to the Assistant Superintendent of Planning, myself. The neighborhood involved was the Midtown Phillips Neighborhood Association, Council Member Jason Chavez, and all of the commissioners. Just a quick overview, this park is a 1.65 acre park. It sits right next to Midtown Greenway. It had been a site of the CPRO elevators, but was demolished as part of the kind of extra work along the Midtown Greenway by Hennepin County, and some initial improvements were made. In 2019, the land was transferred to the MPRB. The concept design for the park was approved as part of the Southwest Service Area Master Plan. We also accepted $300,000 for improvements to the second phase and initiated a naming process. And as I said, that naming process at that time actually resulted in a name that was put forward by resolution by a previous board of the Midtown Park. That nomination process resulted in about 230 respondents into that process. There was a portion of those respondents who did articulate wanting a name that might be indigenous or Spanish or Hispanic, and so there was at least some mention of that in that original naming process. After tonight's public hearing, and hopefully leaving it open to the next one, because these do require the at-large commissioners and the district commissioner to be present, but we would move then to a second public hearing. This naming isn't actually after a person, so we don't have to wait out the full 2 years, but we'll probably still wait a little distance of time before we bring it. We just have to bring it forward for that second public hearing before October 2025. We use our standard notification process, so it goes into the Star Tribune, it goes out through Gov Delivery. We use all of those methods. We've been over this pretty recently in terms of the different ones that are up for consideration right now, and of course the most recent naming was the Lorraine Smaller Park. And with that, I would invite you to open the public hearing and then leave it open until we can close it at the next meeting.
Can you stay there?
So I guess I'll ask again, is there anybody here who would like to speak to this? If there,
I just want to speak, if that's okay. I was 1 minute late to sign up, but I was here last week, and I would love to speak.
okay, well, then if that's the situation, then I have to read our public hearing rules, so I am opening up the hearing here. Is that appropriate? So we can have a hearing now and we can have a hearing at the next meeting. Is that what? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I will read then our open, do I have to read them, Councilor Rice?
She should clarify she wants to speak to this item.
Do you want to speak to?
I would love that.
To the park naming? Oh, okay. Glad we got that clarification, sorry. Okay, so therefore, I am not going to read our rules, okay? And so we'll keep the open time, the public hearing open. And I'm going to have questions then for Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I just wanted to clarify, Secretary Ringgold, we're leaving this open. Will at our next meeting at 5:45, there be a time certain for people to be able to speak to this item, since we're leaving it open, or does it just get pushed to the end of our agenda? I just want to make sure if there are people watching or that want to make comment, that they understand what the process is at that next meeting if we're leaving the public hearing open until then.
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, yes, we would put out a gov delivery indicating that it's still open. It would be a 5:45 time certain.
Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that for all of us. I appreciate it.
Any other questions regarding this from commissioners? Not seeing any lights and everything, I am not going to close the public hearing. And we will move then on to, are we at the end? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Our study item. Thank you so much for that. All right, take it away, Deputy Superintendent.
President Forney, thank you for that. I will also say that we should, on the item that you amended, we should go back and approve it as amended as well. You've approved the amendment,
thank
but
you.
we will also need to approve it as amended. All right. Thank you all. We are now back to the endowment conversation. We've talked about some of the key aspects of what would be in the agreement, and we have moved to the portion where there are actually 3 funding categories that we'd be looking at as what would be eligible for expenses of the revenue coming out of this fund. The first one is historic infrastructure. So when we would think about this historic infrastructure, these would be assets within our system that are long-standing and unique. We would be seeking not to have this be benchmarked, say, after other organizations' determination of historic, but things that would be long-standing and unique in relation to the Minneapolis Park Board. And in addition, we would want to be able to look at the adaptation, right? So something that might have initially been identified to be a wall that might be for a particular shoreline. Today's version of that might actually be naturalization. So we'd want to be able to carve out the ability to implement a new improvement for that historic infrastructure that was more relevant to today's design or how design had evolved. The other piece that we'd want to take care in this particular category is that it doesn't become a category where an outmoded recreation amenity is perpetuated because it becomes eligible for this funding. So there's language in here that articulates that it has to meet a current park and recreation need. So that's this one. We would anticipate things like our Godfrey House, the Theodore Wirth Home, the Stevens House, historic walls, historic bridges. There would be many categories that would fit of our current assets that would fit into this category. The next category that we've identified is regional park and trail care and maintenance. So this really looks at more of the operations and the ongoing rehab of these assets. We have talked collectively for quite a while that this is a category where we would like to see more resources within the system. We've also talked about the fact that while there is by state statute direction that we should be getting about 40% of these costs covered by the council or the state of Minnesota, we're only in reality getting a small percentage. So we don't anticipate this being an area that we're going to get solid public funding, which means that the Minneapolis taxpayer is currently paying significantly more for this type of work than what is intended by the initial conversation around regional parks and trails. So this would be a category of funding that would help perpetuate the operations and maintenance of those regional parks and trails. The next category is natural resources, so land, water, and forest. Again, this is a category within our system that while we have sustained capital improvements over time, we've sustained operating costs, the stewardship of land, water, and forest, which increasingly gets more complex, especially as it has pressures of urbanization impacting them, whether that be climate change, whether that be invasive species, whether that be other types of pressures on these resources. Not only have we not built into our budgets over time the ability to take care of them in kind of their pristine state, we have not built in how to address those types of infrastructure as they receive more urbanized pressures. So this would be intended to be a resource or a funding resource specifically for those types of amenities. This could be neighborhood or regional park, because we have several neighborhoods that do have neighborhood parks that do have within their master plans naturalization of some of those spaces. So this would be eligible both for the introduction or the creation as well as the maintenance and protection of those types of assets. The agreement has a joint endowment committee. Once complete and brought to you in its more complete form, the agreement will articulate the role and the composition. Currently, the thinking around the composition includes 2 park commissioners, 2 Parks Foundation board members, the superintendent, or if they designate the deputy, and the Minneapolis Parks Foundation executive director. Additional members who might not be part of voting in those pieces might be the finance directors of each organization. This endowment committee would also play a role in reporting back to the Minneapolis Park Board in terms of how the overall work was going, would be a point of contact and discussion as we might work through different conversations about the endowment over time, and is identified as the location where if there's a dispute resolution would occur. There's a significant amount of investment management that is engaged with this type of work. The Minneapolis Parks Foundation would be responsible for that investment management. We're working through what that composition looks like, at what point there might be a desire or a need to hire outside financial managers, and what that spending policy is. So spending policy will eventually, once you have the endowment in place, will start to establish how much of it needs to be spent on an annual basis. In terms of annual distribution, so this is an important part because it starts to set some expectations in terms of how quickly this funding will become available, and when it does, what that might look like. So right now, the thinking is that there wouldn't be any distributions until the endowment hit $10 million. And then at that point, there would begin to be distributions coming out of it. That would be determined by the spending policy, so you might see that at somewhere between 4 to 6% a year. Remembering that the actual distributions out of this also have to pay for the costs associated with with managing the endowment. There is a little bit of beeping at the side. I don't think it's anything to
We don't
worry
need to
about.
evacuate. That's my only concern.
Don't believe so.
Okay.
And again, we've talked about this a little bit previously in the presentation, is that this within those funding categories, this funding would come to the board to be administered through its budget process towards eligible activities. So the next steps, we've got a little work to do to finalize language, to work through legal counsel, and then both the Park Board and the Minneapolis Parks Foundation will have an approval process. We'll get it signed, we'll get it going, we'll start fundraising, and at some point we'll be able to start thinking about those distributions. We do have several foundation members here. I don't know if any of them have something they would want to share into this at this point. They're very talented in all of this work. So what questions do you have?
No lights? Well, Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I think I would just like to encourage my colleagues to provide some feedback at this point, since this is our opportunity to talk about this before we bring an agreement before you, to let us know how the categories feel, if they feel appropriate, if you think that we need clarification there, that kind of thing. I know Jennifer tried to touch upon this in her presentation, but I would like to stress to all of you, although I came to the table late on this one, I picked up where Commissioner Smith left off, or Crudup left off when she left us. It was really underscored for me early on just how important it is for us to find sources for these particular items outside of the tax realm, because we just have not been able to get sufficient tax funding. And so that's why staff brought these items forward to us in this forum for funding, because it felt like there would be a large donor base to draw on for this. And then also, we were unlikely to be able to procure tax dollars to pay for these things. So I just wanted to provide that little bit of context, because I found that was very helpful for me in understanding why these categories were being brought forward in this realm. So yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Menz.
Thanks for the presentation. So I think that I'm hesitant to go into the investment realm, although I do know that we need funding for additional sources, and the endowment idea is a sustainable way to consider that. I'm wondering, especially considering what we voted on earlier and the discussions we have around trees and additional trees being planted or finding funds for that why tree planting or new trees wouldn't have been a consideration for an endowment. I'm trying to, as we're thinking of creative ways, and as someone who didn't necessarily support the Green Cities Accord deal, but recognizes the need to figure out funding for that resource consistently, could the committee maybe explain how that might not be an issue, or how that might not be an option, or if that was considered?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, in the natural resources, land, water, and forest category, that does include trees. And it actually also includes boulevard trees as well. So it was included in that category.
Can I follow up with that?
Please.
I do realize that trees are a natural resource. I'm wondering if a more like why it wasn't a more targeted approach of, we're using this endowment to build our urban canopy for decades and generations to come, and that is the purpose of the endowment.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I think that can be discussed further. The categories that were brought forward are ones that we see very little existing public funding coming to, and certainly our urban forest does see a portion of public funding come to it, so it didn't reach kind of the same level of need as some of those other categories.
Commissioner Alper.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting idea. I think the funding categories look good. Appreciate all the work that's been done on this topic. I just would like to better understand what the investments are going to be, how we're going to, the board that is the group that is overseeing the investments, how they will determine which investments to go into, and I would like to know that, or make sure that we specify kind of the overarching values before moving ahead with this, or make sure that that's part of the agreement that we put together. I mean, certainly I would like to divest from fossil fuels, that's one, but could we be making sure that we're investing in companies and portfolios that align with our values? Things that come to mind, like other pension funds and other endowment funds have I think struggled a bit in terms of what to invest in if you are not investing in some of these other sources. So I believe, like FTX was a big cryptocurrency, was a big thing that, and various funds, maybe not endowments specifically, but funds have placed money into. So I just would like to get a little more clarity on that, where you think this is going to go. Make sure that's part of it before we approve an agreement.
President Forney, Commissioner Alper, that actually the commissioner group has brought that up very clearly within the conversations, and so there will be a way to show you when the agreement comes forward where those decisions are made and how we're able to say, look, right now, and it might change over time, recognizing that the board's concerns around different investments, if you've got a 100-year endowment, we might not know all of those concerns over time. So trying to build into it a process that allows, as things emerge, to be brought into that investment conversation.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President Forney. I just think this is a great idea, and I sadly no longer get to sit on the Parks Foundation board. It's good to see you all. But being part of conversations earlier on, I knew that this was on the table, and I wholly support the idea. I think the 3 categories picked are wonderful, because I'm thinking in my mind how Commissioner Schaefer brings these up a lot, and we're always struggling to find, in a good way, and like struggling to find, funding sources. I know historic infrastructure is a big one for me, and so I think this is a really great place to put it. Yes, I agree with Commissioner Alper. It's important to know what investments we're making, but I feel like we'll cross that bridge when we get there, maybe. Thank you for all the work that's been done, especially to the small group committee too. I know that was a lot. Thank you.
Vice President Abene, which I need to note that Vice President Abene is here. She was at the Board of Estimate Taxation. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, President Forney. Just briefly, I very much support this, and I'm excited about this. I like the categories as well, and I'll go back and look at parts of the presentation that I missed. But I mean, I'm a person in my day job. I fund infrastructure. I have to manage infrastructure. Infrastructure is hard to and I consider this all to be sort of like infrastructure and maintenance style funding. It's hard to sometimes do that, and I think this is a great mechanism, and something I would actually give small amounts of my wealth to. I don't have a lot, but if I had more, I swear it would be more. But anyway,
Get her name
thanks.
down. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I just think it's really exciting that this board may potentially be able to establish an endowment after 140 years for this park system and how great this park system is. And I think we should consider that a great privilege. And yet we've got some details to iron out. This has been a long process, very thoughtful, very engaging, and I'm thrilled to have such a partner with the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. I want to address the purposes that Commissioner Menz kind of touched on around the natural resources. We purposely left these categories broad. So within this, all the spending decisions will come to us when we have our allocations, right? And if we get to a point where we decide a particular policy we have been following over the course of a certain number of years needs to be switched or changed, this has the opportunity to do that. Or to add to something that we've been doing that still has a shortfall. So these are purposefully broad to allow this board and future boards to really analyze the needs that we have at that point in time, and those will flex. But yet we needed to keep them focused in the sense of protecting our public funding. So it was kind of this process. And the other thing I want to mention that wasn't highlighted here is we do have an amendment currently in the document that talks about at some point in time, future boards may wish to add another purpose. So we're not going to just start another endowment for whatever it might be down the road, but this will be the endowment, but yet have some flexibility to, if the board decides there's another funding category that we're really short on or has become apparent after 50 years, that there will be flexibility in that for the board to be able to flex. And public funding may change as well over the course of time. So I think this is really a great start, and we spent a lot of time on these purposes. So it's thrilling for, I know, Commissioner Musich and President Forney and myself to hear that it wasn't all in vain.
Commissioner Musich for a second time.
Thank you, President Forney. So I appreciate my colleagues taking the time to share their thoughts and let us know where they have a lot of interest. I would like to just level set for all of us. This current board, those of us that were elected this term, we will not be spending one penny of this endowment. And in fact, it may take decades for the endowment to get to a point where we are able to draw money out of it. So while it's very exciting and it's thrilling and I'm so excited we're gonna get to do it, we are doing this for future generations. we are not doing this for ourselves and the budget challenges that we are addressing this year. This is for the future. It's an investment that we are making in the future. It's knowing that these are shortfalls now. They have been for many decades. That's not likely to change anytime soon, and we're putting in place a mechanism to help address that problem. So I'm excited to hear that there seems to be broad support for us to continue to pursue this funding option. And yeah, thank you all for taking the time tonight to be very forthright in what you're looking for. And the investment piece also, likely we will not be shaping that guidance because there won't be money to invest really for a while. But future boards will have that power through the agreement that we're working on. So yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Menz for a second time.
My microphone is doing some weird stuff today.
He's charged.
Thank you, President Forney. And thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. I really appreciate that clarification and that understanding of where I was coming from, but also correcting and sort of refocusing, because the broad categories do sound really great. I think it's a generational thing where we're going to wait. So thank you, Commissioner Musich, and a great discussion. So very much for that.
So this is so exciting for me. I just need everybody to know that 11 years when I became a commissioner, I told former executive director of the foundation, Tom Evers, that I wanted to establish an endowment. So to me, this is really monumental that, you know, we are so close to activating it and everything. One of the things that at least has been discussed since we last met with the foundation and everything is my hope is that we'll have perhaps a report coming from them each year. We get that type of report that comes from the LOPIT, and I think it's a really, you know, for us to know what's happening, you know, behind the scenes, that type of thing is really transparent in the way, you know, the way we do things, and so I'm really excited about it. And I'm waiting to kick it off. So we have a few more tweaks to make, and hopefully we'll be bringing something to finalize, you know, to the board. And thank you for the presentation. So, not seeing any other lights. We need to move back to approving the amended resolution, what is it? 2024-113. So somebody would like to move the amended resolution for,
I believe it's already been moved, so we just need to vote on the resolution as amended.
is that correct? Okay, all right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, so we are on to petitions and communications. I never remember which end that we start. Well, go ahead, Commissioner Alper.
Pass.
Commissioner Rucker.
Pass.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. After 2 years of drought, we are now experiencing a spring that is much like the springs of 2014 through 2016. People are a little freaked out seeing Minnehaha Creek having breached its banks in a couple of spots. They're not happy with the flooded roadways. They don't understand why we have trails that are underwater. Yeah, our hot, wet summers they're back. And I'm very thankful for our partners at the Watershed District and the work that they've been doing in partnership with us and the National Weather Service to really proactively manage water in the watershed based on forecasts. The capacity that they made in Lake Minnetonka really saved us from serious flooding last night. And while that's not always going to be the case, if that had been a 3-inch rain instead of a 2-inch rain, it would have been a different story. But that proactive response to the data that we have really is paying dividends in terms of not seeing serious flooding in the city. So I'm thankful to them for all the work that they're doing to really advance the way that we manage water in our urban environment. And yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that things can draw down enough that there will be enough capacity for our next storm.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Pass.
Commissioner Menz.
Pass.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'll just say thank you to Sherry Brooks and Kate Ryan and their team of staff who put on a wonderful volunteer celebration a week ago. I just was able to attend and say thank you to several of the people that were there, and it was a privilege to participate in that event, and I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work.
Vice President Abeni.
Thank you, President Forney. May I do a little bit of an update of my outside committees, but I also have a P&C item as well?
Please do.
Thank you. So there was a special meeting of the Audit Committee last week on the 14th. The reason for the meeting was that the city auditors left the city after 9 or 12 years. I don't quite remember the number, which is unfortunate. He had really built something pretty great there. However, we were able to appoint Siddhartha Pudia, who is also been with the department for about a year, as an interim for city auditor role, and I would assume we're going to be going out for that, hiring that position permanently. The other thing is, today I was at a BET meeting, Board of Estimate and Taxation, and that's why I'm late. The fine executive team, parts of the executive team were there today to present the NPP 20 annual report. This is required in ordinance that this is the board, the BET receives this report annually. There were a lot of other good questions from the BET members about potential items that may be part of our levy request, and that was very exciting, I thought, particularly around youth programming, youth engagement. There was also, I think, a lot of real positive, some good questions about how we engage with the community, and the superintendent was able to really answer those questions well, of course, but I think have resulted in real positive feelings about the park board, which I share with those members of the BET. So thank you. The other things from at the BET, there were some couple of presentations, but I think of maybe more interest. We actually passed a resolution that had been drafted by the president of the board, Steve Brandt, to ask the Charter Commission to essentially review this vacant position. The board has 6 members, and to bring back a 7th member. The 7th member used to be on the library board, but that's been not the case since that was disbanded around 2009 or whatever. So, and that the resolution suggests that the member should be an elected public member. So that's going forward. Okay, so I'd also like to do P and C here, and I don't normally do this, but I thought this would be something that could be maybe good to discuss briefly. So, or at least for me to bring, as I understand what Ps and Cs are for. So, we all the commissioners today received an email from someone representing the Sierra Club, and in that email was representing some things about greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions. And there was a linked document there. It's the city's climate action plan, I believe, is the actual document that was linked. And in there was some discussion about, let me get this right, about, I'll use this term, road transportation being 22% of the city's carbon footprint. But the linked document, those are data points from 2010. So the city has another document that's available online looking at road transportation, saying it's 24% of the carbon emission footprint. But I think this is a really important thing. I had some correspondence with, a year ago, almost to the day, with the city's sustainability program coordinator and asked for more information about that. Because I think that if you want to make change, you need to actually know what you're looking at and where the opportunities are. So I think it's really important to know that if the number is 22 or 24%, that this data that they use is currently vehicle miles traveled as provided by a MnDOT computer model. I think that's fine. It includes miles driven through Minneapolis, regardless of starting or ending point. Okay, so that to me seems like something that should not be included in the data, because I think the city of Minneapolis should only really be able to influence, or should be seeking to influence, trips taken by the citizens of Minneapolis. I think people passing through our city or coming to our city, I think that's a bad data point to include, but it also includes shipping and transportation. So all of the trucking and goods and services that come into our city or even bypass through our city are included. The other thing is they break down the vehicle miles, they assume fuel types and so on, but they're not currently accounting for electric vehicles. So as we read that email that we got today and understand this, I would just ask my colleagues to say, yeah, sure, the transportation sector has this impact, but our biggest impact is our heating demand here in Minneapolis. And it's something we should all be concerned about and focusing our resources on. That's it for me, thanks.
Thank you for that update, and I'm going to turn to Superintendent Bangor, please.
Thank you, President Ford, for recognizing me. I do appreciate this. I'll be quick. I wanted to share just three things. Doors Open was this weekend over the Theodore home. It was absolutely amazing. We had 1,002 people come through that house, which was pretty incredible. I think the first day was somewhere around 400 something, 600 next day. Gratitude not only to, I was talking to Jeremy, the team that did some amazing work around the house and the front of the appearance of the home was incredible. But also, of course, Mark Rui and Dana Worth Sparks and Angela, our archivist, Dawn Summers, they were just absolutely amazing. My wife, who puts up with it, and my son, who hid in the room pretty much the whole time. But it was really incredible. It was really, and the beauty of it, I think, that I just wanted to share is that to be able to stand there and talk to people directly, as in my role, and understanding what this house means, right, to this organization, to this park system, to stand there individually and talk to hundreds of people about the park system, about who we are, about, the board and my role and position, and a lot of questions that a lot of folks don't have, but I was able to talk to constituents and people directly in the home and in our home. So very, very grateful for it. It was a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I'll share more pictures and things with you. And so thank you for support, and it was great to see Sarah was there on Thursday, which was really wonderful, and so from the foundation, so thank you for that. The next thing I want to mention is TPL. Obviously, as we all know, this park system was ranked number 2 in the nation as the best park system in the country, one of the best park systems in the country. And that is, and I mean, as we know, the park system, Minneapolis always ranks very high in the national polling. And it's really, if you look at the TPL, just to look it up, it really is based on very clear metrics and data. I told Mayor Fry today, as we're speaking about the launch of the downtown and the city's kind of activities that they're been doing in Minneapolis, that he can now go to Mayor Carter and tell him we're now number 2, because we went back and forth. We were 3 last year, now we're 2, and they're 3. So it's really, really good. But to think about the Twin Cities, our 2 parks are the top 2 park systems in the country, which is pretty amazing. Washington, D.C. is number 1, but that's one other story. But we're very proud of everybody, and it's really great work, and just wanted to acknowledge that, and thank you to this board and to the residents of Minneapolis for their support and their undying, wavering love for this park system, and their commitment to it is our community. So thank you to that for them. The last thing I want to share with you, as you have on your table, is the session highlights. If you have any questions on this, the reason I'm grateful to Pamela and to, of course, for putting this together, but of course, Brian and Frankie and everybody that's worked so hard. But this gives kind of a really brief kind of outline on the session highlights. I know we're going to be presenting in a couple of weeks, I believe, Pamela, we're going to be presenting a legislative update. And these wonderful people who have worked so hard, so hard, like sending emails at 2 in the morning because sessions end at 12, and just their hours and hours of dedication and time. So there's a lot of good things in here. As we know, of course, if you read the bottom one, no capital investment bill, very, very difficult. It was tough to 30 seconds. And I'm grateful for Senator Champion, Representative Abaje, Representative Lee, who got this on that list. A $910 million to get down to $91 million, and to still have the park board as a $6 million on that list. Grateful, and it was tough, but it is, I can't say much more about that, but we have some work to do. And again, grateful for our partners in the foundation, grateful for the city of Minneapolis and the funding that they gave us through the ARPA, through the $3 million, Representative Omar, through the dollars, the $2 million there, and then of course we raised from the state previously. We have some work to do, but just wanted to share this information with you all, and if you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll give more information, of course, in a couple of weeks. But gratitude towards this team here and the work that they've done. It was just really pretty amazing, so very grateful for that, and thank you to this board for your support. All right, thank you.
Thank you. You actually stole my thunder since nobody was acknowledging it. Brian, I think next time when you have a contract before us, you better put a sleeping bag in it as a request. I mean, really, that was an amazing end of session. So thank you though, for your efforts. And I don't have anything to share other than the fact that I hope that yesterday was a joyous occasion for Commissioner Musich, whose birthday was. Happy birthday. And I will. With that, I will adjourn the full board and move on to Operations and Environment. She can't even open
Can't
up
read
the
my card. I gotta do work. Okay. The time being 6:36 p.m., I would like to call the Operations and Environment Committee to order. Secretary Ringgold, can you please take the roll?
Vice President Abeni?
Present.
Commissioner Menz?
Here.
Commissioner Rucker?
Here.
Vice Chair Alper?
Present.
Chair Musich?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. This evening, we have to approve agenda.
Yes.
Goodness gracious, look at me, jumping ahead. Can I get a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We have an agenda. We don't have any minutes this evening, but we do have, I'm very excited for this, a study report item on our stormwater utility fee and our parkway funding that we secured last year with the city. So, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Musich, Commissioners, good evening. I'm going to start with Parkway funding update. So as you may or may not know, PV001 is the city's fund for Parkway rehabilitation. Just a reminder that the rehabilitation fund covers pavement replacement within the curb line and ADA ramps. It does not cover curb replacements or utility replacements. Parkway reconstruction and preventative seal coating are not included in PV001, except when the seal coating is directly associated with a rehabilitation project. So we were successful in increasing PV001 for the foreseeable future. Congratulations to everybody. So through the mayor's budget and the approved ordinance, the planned funding increases are shown here, rising to $2.75 million by 2027. The ordinance itself does not state a funding level beyond 2027, but it does state that the Public Works Department shall maintain the parkways at a standard not less than the city's standard for other city streets. So I do want to note that, and then also note that while the above funding increases are expected to meet the requirement of the parkway system being held to an equal or greater standard than the city streets, this level of funding will still see an average PCI decline for the foreseeable future. Sorry for that note. And as I start talking about PCI, just a reminder that Pavement Condition Index is an industry standard that allows us to compare the conditions of the roadway surface. The city is now collecting PCI data in 4 quadrants throughout the city, and with 1 quadrant each year, so that we'll have no data that's ever older than 4 years old. And they started in 2021 with North Minneapolis, and there's a rating system here that's shown that goes from very good to very poor, and a map. This is a few years old, noting some of the sections of the parkway system and their condition. So looking at some of those isolated areas that we've been working on or will be working on, you can see here on the right side of the screen, we did Theoworth Parkway between Highway 55 and 29th in 2021 and 22, and that's represented by the blue area. It's all very good condition. In this year and next, we're going to be working on St. Anthony Parkway between Central and Stinson, and you can see that area shown here that has significant areas that are very, very poor. And then additionally, St. Anthony Parkway between 5th Street and Central is also identified on a longer term forecast shown here in orange, which is of poor condition. So the PV001 program is a program that the City of Minneapolis and the Park Board jointly program, and it takes into consideration the pavement condition and equity in alignment with the city's 20-year streets funding plan. So we do have a tentative 2024 to 2030 program. We really only identify each individual segment as we get into that next year. So we do know that in 2024 and 2025, we'll be spending time at St. Anthony Parkway. And there's a list here of the other segments that have been identified to be improved with this additional funding between 2026 and 2030. So then I'll note that until recently, the only seal coating or the red chip seal that you see, the signature for parkways, that has occurred was always the year after rehabilitation. And so while we don't have a true seal coating program, sort of a projection, because we only have the 50,000, we have allocated, the board has allocated through the CIP, $50,000 annually using regional pavement rehabilitation funding. And through that CIP, that is just from 2023 currently to 2026. That $50,000 does allow us to seal coat a half a mile of parkway. And we did Victory Memorial in 2023. We'll be doing a section of Minnehaha Parkway in 2024. And these are going to be determined annually as we meet with Public Works staff as well. And then I'll also note that through this legislative session, the state of Minnesota allocated $1 million of one-time funds to the Park Board in fiscal year 2025 for parkway reconstruction through the Omnibus Transportation Bill. So while there's currently no parkway reconstruction program as of yet, just want to remind you all that we have a planned reconstruction project at East River Parkway that is about 1 mile long, and that's anticipated to cost about $7 million in 2025 construction dollars. So a success in finding the $1 million, but still work to do. And Park Board intergovernmental relations staff are in discussions with the state legislators regarding future funding for parkways beyond 2025, for parkway reconstruction beyond 2025. We are also in active discussions and negotiations with the city of Minneapolis on a joint powers agreement. It's intended to provide details on the roles and responsibilities of each organization as it relates to parkway reconstruction, rehabilitation, seal coating, and annual consultations and reporting requirements. The work is very much in process, and so it's difficult to share much information on the JPA at this moment. That concludes the Parkway update. I think it might be best to have questions and discussion about parkways before you hear a very detailed discussion on stormwater, but open to your suggestions.
You're running a meeting.
You go. I'm going to let Commissioner Benny go first.
Thank you, Chair Musich. I'm actually totally jumping the gun here, but thank you. This is exciting. Also happening under this board, Commissioner Schaefer. To your earlier comment, we should feel pretty good about that. But when you do the $1 million investment, thank you so much for getting that. And you know we could use more next year, but thank you so much. Don't cheap out. You got to get those soils out of there if you're doing East River Parkway. So you'll get to do less of this because you're going to have to do more of this, but it'll be absolutely worth it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
And so that's a perfect dovetail because I too would like to comment on how we could do a little bit extra with this work, and that's in encouraging our lobbying team to really push the Green Parkways bonding request next cycle, especially since they didn't bond this year. It just seems like a perfect dovetailing of needs. Like they absolutely know we have parkway needs in terms of funding, and we also have a very dire need for water management, as Commissioner Thompson probably can speak to. I mean, she had flooded parkways after the storms as well. So there's just a great opportunity as we're rebuilding these roads to rebuild them in a way that better manages our stormwater while also ensures that they're stable enough to be able to handle the traffic that they've got on them. So just a plug for our Green Parkways bonding request. I believe President Forney, your light came on next, and then I'll be going to Commissioner Menz.
I just want to thank you. I'm not in this committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just have to do a huge, huge, huge shout out to Senator Dibble and Representative Hornstein. Vice President Benny and I met with them last year after they had passed a huge transportation bill. And Senator Dibble just looked at us with this unbelievable face saying, you guys are orphans. And realizing that, we were left out of that whole transportation funding. And so this is a huge effort on their behalf to get this specified specifically for us. And I want to say this because we've named one fund after them, the Parkland Dedication Fee. I don't know if we can name another, but I want to acknowledge the fact that Representative Hornstein is retiring, and I'm just so, so grateful for those two and all that they have done for our park system. So we will miss you, Frank.
Thank you, President Forney. Commissioner Menz.
Thank you for recognizing me. So if I'm hearing this right, the next 3 years, St. Anthony Parkway and then Stinson will be, because it looked like they were in the order. Because I want to be clear with my community, because I hear a lot about I know that we lost some funding from the St. Anthony Parkway a few years ago. And
Chair Music, Commissioner Menz, the list noted here between 2026 and 2030 is not intended to be a priority list. So for 2024 through 2025, we are definitely working on St. Anthony Parkway between through those 2 years between Central and Stinson. Then identified within the next 5 years, 2026 through 2030, this entire list is intended to be rehabilitated, not in this order necessarily. Those decisions get made as we get to future years and we look at updated pavement condition index. We take into account the city's version of their sort of equity metrics that they have for transportation planning, and then also looking to sort of make sure we're spreading projects throughout the city. So you can communicate to your constituents that St. Anthony Parkway will be addressed between Central and Stinson this year and next.
Okay, but not the Stinson. I've been hearing a lot about Stinson Boulevard and the neglect for years. So, okay, that's good. This mic is driving me crazy today. Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right, I do not see any additional lights. I believe we're now moving on to the piece about the water program. And I believe Deb Pilger is going to be leading us through that section. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Pardon?
We can indeed hear you.
So good evening, Commissioners. I'm here tonight to provide you an update on some work we've been doing related to the allocation and the utilization of the MPRB's new stormwater utility funds. So for your information, I want to give you a little overview of what I'll be covering tonight, because there is some background information to re-familiarize everyone with. I'm going to quickly refresh people on the board resolution that was passed in 2023 and highlight the City of Minneapolis ordinance updates that were also adopted in 2023. And then I'm going to review what the NPDES federal permit is, because that's going to be a term I'm using throughout my presentation. Just want to make sure everyone's familiar with what that is. And then present some information on the stormwater management program update work that's currently occurring between both the City of Minneapolis and MPRB staff. And then finally, I'll share some information on a consultant contract that we recently entered into related to the stormwater utility funds utilization and the contract timeline. So as a reminder, last April of 2023, this board passed Resolution 2023-55, and that resolution requested dedicated stormwater utility fee funding from the City of Minneapolis of $2 per month per equivalent stormwater unit. And the money was requested to really support the Park Board's management of the stormwater infrastructure that's on our park properties and to create a capital program for water quality improvement projects. And there were a few key outcomes of that resolution that I'd like to highlight, but I also want to highlight that throughout 2023, several members of this board and staff and city council and city staff and the mayor's office were really working closely to really secure this dedicated funding for the MPRB. So there were three significant outcomes of this resolution. One of those was two different updates that were done to the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances. They're both shown on the screen here in summary. One was an amendment to section 510.80 of language stating charges applicable to the MPRB shall be shown as a separate line item in the stormwater bill. And then the second update to the Code of Ordinances was section 510.90 amendment allowing funds to be paid out of the stormwater fund to the MPRB. These were really significant amendments as they created a path for us to directly receive stormwater utility funds for the first time. And I think they demonstrated that we were really part of the stormwater utility. The original resolution also led to the direct allocation of $1,324,000 in stormwater fees to the MPRB starting in 2024. And this is also really significant because for many, many years, we've been receiving annual reimbursements for expenses that we've had. And we had a cap at $800,000 annually given to us a couple of years ago by the city. So raising that level up from $800,000 to $1.3 million was pretty significant for us as an organization. And most of those funds that we were being reimbursed for previously were really just associated with our stormwater monitoring program and our education expenses. And they were based on annual agreements between the city and the MPRB. So just wanted to point out that not only are we getting a direct allocation, but we're also getting another new $524,000 this year. And I'm happy to report to this board that we did receive our first direct allocation recently. It was $331,000, and it was for Q1 of 2024. So congratulations to the board and the organization. It's been received by finance. That was good news. And then I also wanted to point out that that original resolution that was passed did lead the MPRB and the city to agree to enter into a joint powers agreement in lieu of a concurrent ordinance. And the joint powers agreement is going to establish some kind of agreement between the city and the MPRB to cooperate in the operation of the storm sewer system and to make sure we're meeting those NPDES permit requirements and any other applicable state and federal ordinances laws. And the JPA is also intended to capture the elements of last year's budget negotiations that were happening between the two agencies. So like the parkways, we are working on the JPA and it's under development. So happy to report that. Wanting to point out that the stormwater utility funds, I could talk for a long time about how important they are, but they are very important to us as an organization. There's a multitude of reasons. This dedicated funding source for us to manage our storm sewer system and the BMPs we have on our property and the monitoring, the education, all of that, that's really significant for the organization. They're also a critical funding source for us to use to implement and be in compliance with our federal NPDES permit that's required by the Clean Water Act. And then we also see these funds as a key potential funding source for water quality improvement projects in Minneapolis. And we have not had any capital program for many years associated with water quality improvement projects. So we see these as a source to be doing some water quality improvement projects throughout the city. And just a quick reminder, the NPDES permit, or National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, is a federal stormwater permit that's required by the Clean Water Act. And in the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency administers this permit, and we hold this permit jointly with the city of Minneapolis. We're part of the permit because we own a portion of the storm sewer system in the city. And one of the primary purposes of the permit is to regulate stormwater runoff into local surface waters to reduce the impacts of pollution. So these dollars are really a lot about water quality and water quality improvements, water resources management, great source for us for that. And a couple other things I want to point out on the NPDES permit is that they're issued about every 5 years. We just received our most recent one on December 12th of 2023. The new permit is much more prescriptive than our past permits have been, and it is going to have more training and reporting requirements for us, and we're working really closely with the city on getting both of our entities into compliance on the new permit. I did want to share with the board, we are having a much bigger role in the permit compliance development, in the stormwater management program update. And I think that we've seen a lot of support from the city for having us more involved. And we're at the table with them, working through the new permit and all of its requirements. And we have 1 year from the date of that permit issuance to submit an updated stormwater management program to the PCA to show how we are going to be in compliance with that new permit. And I want to highlight a couple things about this stormwater management program submittal. This is required by that NPDES permit. It's a document that really guides how we implement the permit and how we are in compliance with the permit. And it creates really a framework of how we work together as co-permittees between the city and the MPRB. This is a picture of the current stormwater program management document from the most recent permit. I know some of you are familiar with it. We will essentially be updating this document and with an objective of really providing some clear structure and clear guidance for that compliance and minimizing pollutants. And as I mentioned previously, since MPRB and city are co-permittees, the NPDES permit does require us to enter into an agreement between our two entities. And staff is looking at this stormwater management program update, or SWAMP, as it's called in the stormwater world, as serving as that agreement between the MPRB and the city. So we are planning to come to this board for adoption of the stormwater management program in fall of 2024. And the city staff will be bringing this update to the council to adopt in fall of 2024 also, because we have to have that submission done by December of 2024. And this is the first time that the Board of Commissioners will be adopting the SWAMP at the MPRB. Yep, it's a big step for us. The city's been adopting it for many years, so I think it helps again to demonstrate our increased role, our involvement, our responsibilities. And then I also wanted to share with this group tonight that we recently entered into a contract with a local environmental consultant to develop really an expanded stormwater management program for us. We've been doing some stormwater management in the organization. We've been doing the monitoring work, we've been doing the education work, we've been doing some BMP maintenance where we can, but we really need to expand our program into a much more comprehensive stormwater management program. And this work is going to entail an evaluation of the things we've been doing as an agency. And they're going to look at several areas, including staffing, budgeting, permit compliance, asset management, infrastructure mapping, cooperative agreements, and our own operations and maintenance. And we're looking for this assessment to really pinpoint what our needs are and where our gaps are in our stormwater management program, and to propose some enhancements for us to build a more effective stormwater program. And we think it will help us to really help build an effective partnership between the city and us too. I mean, we've been working really well together on monitoring and education, but there's more work to be done around stormwater management in the city, and really looking for the consultant to help us kind of advance and expand our program. And the aim is really to align us with regulations while still developing some of those really big pieces of a stormwater infrastructure asset management strategy and O&M and staffing, staff training. So wanted to share our schedule. I don't know how well that's showing up on your screens. Might be a little blurry.
Pretty good.
I'll point out a few key things. The consultant, this is a Gantt chart showing the projected timeline associated with several of the consultant contract components, and the work kicked off in April, and it's scheduled to be completed in January of 2025. It is a pretty significant project for our work group, and it's really important to do this work to build our expanded stormwater program. And it should build the foundation for us for future funding needs from that stormwater utility funds, and it should work to expand our stormwater management program and help develop what that future work will be. Doing the work with this consultant to really get a more informed understanding of what our current state of affairs is around stormwater management and what our future needs are around stormwater infrastructure and permit compliance and staffing and budgeting should help us to really strategically align this program and be able to execute an effective program. So we're looking forward to this work. I do want to point out a couple highlights because I know it's a little hard to see some of the text associated with this. The gaps analysis is projected to be done by the end of July. That'll be a really important piece of information for us and will influence, some future funding requests. And the staffing model is projected to be complete by early October. And this will put us in a position to be going out for some hiring before the end of the year. It's likely that not all of the positions that are potentially identified in our staffing model will be able to be hired because I don't think that $524,000 is going to be able to fund what all of our needs are. But the work will really inform future budget requests that the organization makes for accessing the stormwater utility funds for the program. So that's where we are on the stormwater side of the ordinance updates. So are there any questions that I can answer for the group tonight?
Yes, and this time I'm going to go first, and then I'll pass the baton on to Vice President Aveni. So you mentioned the gap analysis will be done this summer. Is that the piece that we need complete in order to frame for the city what our actual need is? Because I know last year they had told us they were only willing to increase our fee allocation by a small amount because we hadn't demonstrated we actually needed a larger amount. Is the gap analysis what we need to complete to be able to make that case? Or are there additional components of that contract that need to be done also?
I think there are additional components. I think the gaps analysis is a piece of what we need to do to show where we have gaps in information, where we have gaps in staffing, where we have gaps in compliance. But then additional work will need to be done in order to help us build that funding that's associated with coming back to them with a budget request.
Okay, and do we anticipate that additional work will also be complete prior to the deadline the city might have around their budgeting process for their fee schedule?
We've been talking about that as a large group, as part of the Stormwater Funding Strategies group, and we're looking at like a 2026 budget request for year 2026 budget, and we need to nail down what exactly their deadlines are associated with that. And I think because of the 2-year budget cycle, so we'll be doing a 2025, 2026 budget. Jennifer, do you remember what
There'll be a budget amendment for them.
Yeah, that we were looking that we would have to go outside of the process because of the 2-year budget cycle.
Okay, and the big group that you're mentioning you're speaking with, is that including the city of Minneapolis staff in that conversation, or are you talking internally to the park board?
That group that I referenced is an internal funding strategies group with the MPRB. There have been some conversations and work groups associated with the city too, so we've got a lot of different teams working on.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're being very transparent and clear with our partners at the city around when we anticipate we'll have the information we need to request that additional fee increase. Because I don't want it to blindside them midway through a 2-year budget cycle. I would hope that instead they're prepared and understand we'll be coming with that ask.
Yeah, we can make sure we help to deliver that message.
Wonderful. And then the second question I had was in the plan, the comprehensive plan that you're putting together with the city, and I do want to just celebrate the fact that we are part of the development of that plan, a big part of it now. That's huge, especially when you consider we're the end of the pipe for everything else that they're managing. So very excited to see that we're at the table with that. As part of that, will we be defining a process for city-owned stormwater infrastructure on parkland and how that gets addressed when it fails or has maintenance issues?
I think that's an important part of our work, is to develop some kind of like matrices around who's responsible for what based on what the water sources are and who's going to be responsible for taking care of things when they fail.
Okay, wonderful, because I know Commissioner Benny and I were able to make really great use of failing city infrastructure on parkland and the damage it was causing since it wasn't being maintained properly. So I would love for us to, at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, get to a place where when someone tells us, oh, hey, this isn't being maintained, it's a hot mess, when is someone going to do something about it? We have a way to actually get something done because we know who's responsible and who's got to take action to address that. So I'm excited to hear that that's part of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think our intention is to come up with like a model for how the MPRB would propose that is handled, and we have some sessions scheduled in with the city to be talking to them about the work we're doing, but yeah, we need to.
Better coordination.
We need to come to some agreements, yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And now I will allow Commissioner Benny to ask her questions. Hopefully I didn't steal too many of them.
You stole a couple.
Sorry about that.
Thank you,
But
Chair.
not sorry.
Okay, so the SWIMP that's required, or the SWAMP, or however you say it, the P stands for program, and this is what's so exciting about this is I can see that you're working to build out the stormwater program around the NPDS permit. And it would seem to me as the city adds infrastructure or modifies their existing infrastructure that terminates on parkland, I'll use that term, we could then in those each individual agreements also require maintenance and things like that. But you also mentioned earlier, you were talking about things that the park board already does, and you referred to education expenses. But if you could just maybe share a little bit about why you do that education piece and what is it exactly? You're not training your staff, right?
Correct. So as part of the NPDS permit, there is a requirement for both the MPRB and the city of Minneapolis to do some water quality, stormwater education throughout the city of Minneapolis. Public education, yes, public education. And we've been doing education for years, and I think we have just an excellent program, very innovative approaches to education. We've done things, we've had different pet waste campaigns throughout the city. We've used the sides of buses. We've done tabling at events where we have like a stream table that shows how the water flows through the city and what can happen, what the impacts of pollutants are. We do events out in the parks. We might lead canoe trips on the lakes where we then talk about the stormwater that comes into the lakes and what their impacts are and algal blooms and things like that. So it's a comprehensive public education program that is intended to reach like all audiences. There's stuff that's geared towards youth, kids. There's stuff that's geared towards adults. And we do that through our environmental education work unit in environmental management.
So now we'll have a dedicated funding source for that, and it's a requirement of that NPDS permit, and I think it's pretty cool. So again, this is something that engages our community, and I think Minneapolis residents know a little bit more than the average Joe, I think, about water quality on the whole. So I'm going to give full credit to you, Deb, and your team for that. So the other thing I wanted to maybe speak to just briefly was about the financial parts of this. So I do see that what you're working on now with the consultant is essentially the business case that was a little hasty last year, but important. I think that we got this going last year. But I see that the mapping work plus this consultant work, I think, is a sort of the comprehensive business case. And I would hope that as the mayor is being approached this year, that he should be alerted that we're doing this work per the agreement, following the agreement, and that we will be coming forward with probably larger than a somewhat incremental or cost of living type increase for that off year. And hopefully he can agree to that in this session. That seems fair to me. But then the other thing I want to point out, again, I was just at the Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting, and we saw a list of bonding projects, and I've brought this up before. The city bonds against these funds. They do. For, of course, infrastructure improvements, so they'll do like the city big tunnel downtown, but they also list some of their development projects. And I tried to get more information on that, again, at this meeting tonight, and I didn't get it. But I think that they're using that to help supplement their site development work, if I'll call it that. And so I think it's something that we need to explore, because this fee can also then support a certain amount of debt service if we get enough for it. So our fee needs to consider that. And so if we could probe that a little bit more with the city, I think that they're actually doing something that they said they didn't do, but I think they're doing it. So anyway, okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
You done?
And thank you for the compliments on the staff. Yeah, got a great group.
Commissioner Mentz.
Thanks for recognizing me. Thanks for your work on this. This is really, this is some really exciting stuff on how this is going to play out. On the public education piece, something that I have worked on, and being a school teacher and being at multiple grade levels over the years, and recognizing the impact that public education programs and curriculum can have on the broader impact of educating our citizenry, is to start with the youth. And I think that with this funding, and I would encourage our group, and I'm encouraging MWMO to partner with these types of things, but a dedicated curriculum highlighting state standards that is offered to our schools would be an extremely valuable resource for teachers and also for our community. Because if we can somehow integrate this kind of urban water cycle into our curriculum and with our schools, it's going to have a long-lasting impact. And some folks have been doing this work, and there's a lot of work around that, but there's never been a group or an organization that has really coordinated this large-scale effort to educate young people and their families around what happens when it rains in the urban environment. There's also Mike Tate, who comes here quite a bit. He does a lot of work weekly, doing litter cleanup and also storm drains, which the city has offered over the years, and a program that we've considered as a litter league, which cuts across education with recreation, that where picking up litter in your community at different rec centers could be stormwater education in our rec centers that also has a service component. So I'm really excited about the fact that we do have education funds to motivate and engage young people and families, especially from different cultural backgrounds, which is what happens in schools, to holistically address what every citizen can do to mitigate stormwater, because stormwater management is definitely something that can be mitigated by every person's individual small actions. We need the large-scale infrastructure, but I think that if we're really thinking generationally and we're really thinking about the long-term impact of something like this, how do we start foundationally with the education of the young people and the families?
And thank you for sharing that. And I definitely see that this dedicated funding and having this access to the stormwater utility funds can help us build our education program. We've also had kind of a capped amount for a number of years of how much we can spend on education, and I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I wrote some notes on your ideas, so.
If you're looking for partners, Teacher Billy would be very interested in something like
excellent. Thank you. Yeah, and again, I think that being able to build a program and present a program that has a budget associated with it to grow the education is critical for us. So thanks for sharing.
Alrighty, I do not see any additional lights, so thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm very excited to see this getting spun up. It's been a long time coming, I think, for all of us. So it's very exciting to see that we're finally here and operationalizing what we've only dreamed about doing for so many years.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you very much. You're welcome, and thank you all. Good night.
And with that, I will adjourn the Operations and Environment Committee at 7:14. Who's up next? Admin and Finance?
I'm up next. At 7:15, I call to order Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson, absent. Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Co-Chair Thompson.
Here.
Co-Chair Rucker.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Sounds good. Can I have a member of Move the approval of the agenda.
I will move the agenda.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Move on to approval of the minutes. Can I have a member move that?
I will move the Administration and Finance Committee meeting minutes of May 7th, 2024.
Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes. Can I have a member move the first resolution?
I would like to move Resolution 2024-92, and just to be clear, that I will also make a motion to postpone it. But Resolution 2024-92, a resolution approving third amendment to lease agreement with Boys and Girls Club of the Twin Cities leasing the Phelps Field Park Center building at 701 East 39th Street, extending the term of the lease agreement through December 31st, 2029, and modifying other terms of the lease agreement. So I move that, and now I'm going to make a motion to postpone that very thing to the meeting of June 18th, I believe, is what I was looking at.
Point of information,
July
I
10th.
believe the request is to postpone to no later than July 10th,
So
2024,
is it
per
time
staff
certain?
request.
Yeah. That's fine, then July 10th. Let's do it.
Sounds good. We'll
You can take a vote on the amendment.
take a vote on an amendment. All those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That passes.
Now we vote on it, the resolution as amended.
Okay, so we'll vote on the resolution.
Did we vote on the
we
resolution
No,
as
we
amended?
just voted on it.
We just postponed.
So we
Yeah.
just postponed.
Never mind.
So we're
It's postponed till July 10th.
We're good.
Can I have a member move the next resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2024-106. This is a resolution amending the 2024 Capital Improvement Program to allocate $150,000 from the Whittier neighborhood portion of the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund, the 28th Street Tot Lot Park Improvement Project.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. Can I have the member move the next resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2024-107. This is a resolution approving a 7-year license agreement with Minneapolis Police Department for installation and maintenance of a security camera at the mall park.
Any discussion? Don't see any lights. Oh.
I'll just want to highlight something. It wasn't directly stated in the resolution, but the East Isles Resident Association actually paid for the camera and worked through MPD to spend their neighborhood funds for that. So I just want to give a shout out of thanks to them. We've had a couple incidences on the mall where a couple park police officers experienced some knife wounds. And so this is, I think this will be a great added addition to help curb some of that activity on the eastern end of the mall.
I don't see any other lights. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. There's no study or report item, so at 7:19, I adjourn the meeting.
Nice work.
Yeah, that was quick.
That's amazing.
And noting the time is 7:19, I'd like to open the planning committee. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Alper,
Present.
Commissioner Olson, absent. Commissioner Schaefer,
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson,
Here.
Chair Benny.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have an agenda before us. Would somebody move the agenda for approval, please?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved. Would somebody please move the minutes? We have one set of minutes.
I will move the minutes from the committee meeting on April 24th, 2024.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We have a couple of actions on our agenda. The first action action item, would somebody please read the resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2024-98, a resolution authorizing the superintendent to initiate a process with Hennepin County to consider turnback of portions of the East River Parkway within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park that are currently operating as public road and to identify funding sources to make required safety improvements.
Thank you. I think this probably warrants a little discussion and a presentation. I see, here comes Mr. Swenson.
I would like that.
He knows a lot of things about East River Parkway, I'm sure.
So Carol Hailstone in our office covers this item, and I'm just filling in for her tonight, although I'm very much aware. She's spending some time with her family. Let me just get to the right one. Sorry. Take a moment. So just Chair Benny, I'll just say that before we started the meeting tonight, I asked my partner in crime here, Adam Arvidsson, just about this action. We talked about it, and he goes, I've never been through a turnback process, so this is all new to us, what we're talking about here. Just to give some location and context, so you see the university, you see Washington Avenue Bridge, Mississippi, of course. This is for a section of East River Parkway running just north of Washington Avenue Bridge. And you can see the University Mall. So again, this is on the east bank. Interesting thing, right? Since we are the underlying property owner, back in 1963, we eased over our rights to operate the road as a public road in blue to MnDOT. And then in 2010, as part of the light rail construction between Minneapolis and St. Paul, MnDOT, through a quitclaim deed, presented that property to Hennepin County, and they made improvements and took that road over the surface ownership. Again, we are still the underlying property owner, and if you know East River Parkway in green, this is what we kind of maintain right now. And again, in this darker blue is the responsibility of Hennepin County. Then you can see in the lighter blue portions that are maintained and operated by the city of Minneapolis. And then, of course, other jurisdiction, the University of Minnesota also has ownership here. This all kind of came to a head in the summer of 2019 when we had a sloughing of soil, some of the overburden on just saturated soils, failed vegetation, and the soil sloughed, causing a safety issue along East River Parkway. So there were some engineering studies that were completed to make a safe passage through this area. We closed the parking, we closed the bike trail, we used temporary traffic diversion here and moved the 2 lanes over to the east side of the parkway. So then we began in 2019 just working with University of Minnesota, Hennepin County, City of Minneapolis about what do we do? We've got a safety issue here. Hennepin County has jurisdiction over the parkway, the road surface itself, and they did not have interest in coming forward and helping us with our safety concerns here. One of our primary focus is not only to maintain access with vehicles, but it's really this trail parkway amenity that is very important for us to maintain. So after many meetings and lots of staff time, Tyler Pedersen worked on it recently in the last year and a half. Carol Hailstone in planning has been leading the meetings and leading the charge. We just came to the point where we feel we need to take this back over, take it out of public use, put it back into parkway use. Then we can make some decisions about how to best maintain a safe trail system and parkway system. So what we're asking the board tonight is to allow us to start that, or direct the superintendent to allow us to start that process of turning it back from public operated, public street to a parkway. And again, we're already the underlying property owner. So it aligns with many of our master plans and many of our goals here. It's just that we need to begin to kind of make the safe passage. We feel we want to begin that turn back process with Hennepin County. And again, it's not as if Hennepin County is opposed to this. So this is just the beginning of a process. And I'll just say, and then I'll stand for questions, that there will be a number of policy decisions that we'll bring back to the board as we go through this. Funding, what does that mean when we take it back from Hennepin County, et cetera. So there'll be a number of things that we'll be talking to the board over the next year or year and a half. I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Vice President Abeni. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak. Director Swenson, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying we would like to eliminate the easement that has turned this into a Hennepin County road so that it is now, so it can become again a park road, so that we can then ask for funding to do the safety work that we want to do, so that the full width of the roadway can be utilized again. Is that correct?
Chair Benny, Commissioner Musich, yes.
Okay, awesome.
However, right, we do not know the exact outcome here. So, but we're going to start with that turn back process. It may be requesting funding, Hennepin County or other partners may come forward. So, yes, but it's not, it's kind of a.
The first part is just taking the road back.
Correct.
Okay.
But yes, we're going to seek
But
additional
ultimately,
funding.
we want to get to a place where people are able to utilize the full width of the paved space rather than just a portion of it.
Yes, we will look at all the options before us and bring those design options back to the board if it so warrants.
Okay, wonderful. That makes sense to me. I appreciate you taking a moment to help validate that I'm understanding it correctly.
And the street configuration is still, it would be up in the air, but this would also potentially bring also the trail back, which is completely out of use right now. Commissioner Thompson.
I honestly, I don't even really have a question. Commissioner Musich answered my one question. I will say anecdotally, it's really, the timing of this is incredible because I've just recently took my son to Al's Breakfast. Shout out to the U of M Dinkytown. And as I said to President Forney this morning, I said, once you're in this role, you just see the world differently. And it was just last weekend, I drove through that portion and I was like, what is going on with this road? And it was mentally on my to-do list to reach out to ask what is going on with this portion. I thought it was the U of M to be upset with. I was like, why? This trail has clearly been ignored for years. So it's serendipitous that this comes up, and it's just kind of funny because I was like, what's a turn back? Is it as literal a word as I think it means, that we get it back? What is this? What's going on? So I appreciate this. It's just downloading exactly as I would have planned it when I went to Al's.
Chair Benny, if I may, so Commissioner Thompson, so Carol Hailstone could take those questions and help you just a little bit if you want a little more information on it. And I know you're working with her on some other things too, so.
Well, I'm just grateful that we're taking this on, and I didn't even get to it on my to-do list to ask, so you're already on it. Thank you.
Mr. Swenson, could you turn back to the slide that has the jurisdiction, the colorful, the GIS piece there? City, okay. I would say, and I have some awareness of this area, but also just for people to think about, the Hennepin County, the bridge itself was a state bridge until the light rail project. And if you think about it, these weird shapes, these were like clover leaves. These were like exit ramps back in 1963 when they built this thing. But, one thing I'll say, if possible, I wouldn't work too hard on it, but if there's some discussion with the county, it benefits the county by relinquishing a kind of a straggly little portion of road there. But is there a way for someone to talk about the Arlington piece, which is the east-west piece on the north end of it? And potentially, I have no idea if there's room for that, but some idea of a configuration that would maybe extend the bike trail over there, because then it would connect to the Pleasant Street stuff. It takes you, it's a really good location, even if it's just conceptual. But while the county still has ownership of that, I believe the university led the design of it, potentially, I think, during the pre-work for light rail. However, the county would have some say as to it, and it could at least be put on paper. Does that make sense?
Right on.
Because I think it's a nice little piece, because I don't think you're gonna get anything to the north on the maroon stuff going north, and that's kind of a, other than it takes you down to the number 9 bridge, but, okay.
Very good.
Any other questions? Okay. With that, we have a vote to take. All those in favor of Resolution 2024-98, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution passes. Would someone read the next resolution, please?
I'll also move Resolution 2024-95, resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Minneapolis and Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board for the creation of a park at the new Nicollet former Kmart site at 10th and 30th West Lake Street in Minneapolis.
Excellent. We have had some discussion about this, but I see Ms. Odell is here, and I know she gives fantastic and brief presentations, so anybody interested, any takers?
Yes,
Oh,
I'd
here-
be interested.
I, see, we're excited. This is wonderful. Thank you. But I mean, this is your specialty, I think.
Brief presentation.
Yeah.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Benny. Unfortunately, our city partners were not able to make it today. Need new glasses. Okay. This MOU, I just have a couple slides actually, and funny that you mentioned that it would be brief. So we've already been, the city and park board staff have already been discussing the possibility of a new park at the former Kmart site. And just to formalize the discussions we've had thus far and to acknowledge that we want to continue to work towards the potential of this park existing, we've put together this MOU of the pieces we've already agreed on and the things we'd like to discuss in the future. And the city council has already viewed this. This is not an official land conveyance or anything like that. It's more a discussion of how we want to work together and how we're advancing forward. And it does mention also in the MOU the target dates. We want to complete these initial conversations next month, and then hopefully have the draft agreement, the actual land conveyance before you in October. And hopefully we can get everything approved by early next spring. How's that for short?
Okay. Yes, I just anticipated that, so. So actually, on the previous slide, those are some of the notes that I had. I actually was glad that you've already agreed that the parkland wouldn't host city street runoff. That's a good thing. But I also really, maybe I'm going to push back a little bit, but of course, you know, I won't be at the table, but private stormwater treatment is, in my experience working with developers, they're always looking to push land-consuming things off of their property onto another property so they can make their thing bigger. Because add a little more square footage in the middle of their building doesn't cost them much more. So I would hope that unless there's some idea of some kind of a shared district system or something like that, there should be no, in my opinion, reason to host a private, you know, required obligation. They must do this. They must build stormwater management. They should use their land for it. Any questions or other discussion? Okay. With that, we can go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2024-95, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution also passes. And we have one more resolution. Someone move it?
I'll move Resolution 2024-109. This is a resolution accepting an offer from the Minnesota Department of Transportation to purchase the 28th Street tot lot for no more than $240,000, and amending the 2024 Capital Improvement Program to allocate up to $240,000 from the Whittier neighborhood portion of the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund for that purchase.
Thank you. Is there an interest in the presentation? Is there some discussion? Commissioner Schaefer?
I can give some background to this, or we can have some staff presentation maybe would be more appropriate.
Sure.
Chair Benning, I do have an update with very fresh information, so a presentation might be in order.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Arbor.
Certainly, thank you for the opportunity. The action before you is to acquire the 28th Street tot lot, to essentially accept MnDOT's offer for that, and then it also would approve a funding pathway for paying for that land. The 28th Street tot lot here, this is the MnDOT parcel map, so there's actually a series of parcels that make up the 28th Street tot lot, but it is essentially a triangle here that sits kind of within the city grid and then is bounded by I-35W. In our vision planning, the 28th Street tot lot does serve an important purpose, so I want to show just a couple of graphics from the Southwest Service Area Plan. This is the play area vision. The concept plan for this site, which you have previously approved, does include a play area. You can see if this purple circle were removed, there would be a play area gap in this location. In addition, it is envisioned to have a skate park, and so in the skate and BMX vision here, again, this is serving a fairly important purpose in the Whittier neighborhood for skate options. I should note, just across the freeway right here, this is Central Gym Park. There also is a small skate spot there. So we're trying to provide good overlapping skate service in this location, and 28th Street is a part of that. The basic timeline here is dates back to 1969. So back in those best years of my life, MPRB began leasing property from MnDOT to operate this as a park. Over time, there's been multiple lease extensions and amendments which were executed all the way up until 2019. And at that time, MnDOT terminated our lease and decommissioned the park because that land was needed for the construction or the reconstruction of Interstate 35W, the most recent project. The site was primarily used as a laydown and staging area for construction, but they also did do some construction activities immediately in the vicinity there. At about this same time, in 2020, the board adopted the Southwest Service Area Master Plan. In that plan, as I showed you, there was a vision for this park. I think the park board fully anticipated being able to reclaim that land for the recreating public once the freeway project was complete. And then in 2022, MnDOT's construction was complete, and we were provided an offer letter to purchase that property at fair market value. At that time, staff began a whole bunch of conversations with MnDOT on not just this site, but I think about 6 others, to better understand how MnDOT conveys land. It's highly complicated and governed by a lot of different factors, and not always the same, depending on how right-of-way is classified. So we had to learn a whole lot. Also, right about that time, we did begin community engagement to improve 28th Street tot lot. There was a CIP allocation for $200,000 to improve that, and so we essentially initiated that project in 2023. In 2024, MnDOT staff did approach the Federal Highway Administration to request approval to sell at less than fair market value. So the reason for that, little last tidbit, goes to a couple of key facts about this property. I think it's clear that both MPRB in our policy direction and also MnDOT staff, from my relationships with them, it does seem that everyone wishes this parcel to be returned for use as a public park. MnDOT, however, has rules governing land transfers, which are codified in state statute, in their right-of-way manual, and also by the Federal Highway Administration, because we are talking about an interstate freeway. So the MnDOT right-of-way manual is also approved by FHWA, and much of it appears in state statute. So these 3 things are interlocked and really hard to change. Not all MnDOT right-of-way has the same rules for conveyance and disposition, but this particular parcel of land, because of its nature, must be sold at fair market value. MnDOT has provided us an appraisal of the property, which we reviewed. We feel it to be in line with typical appraisal practices. So essentially, we would, as staff, agree that the $240,000 offer is correct and fair. We worked with MnDOT to see if we could get that sale price reduced. That needs to be approved by FHWA. It's an important point to note that MnDOT can no longer lease this property to us. Because this is determined to be, I'm going to probably get the name wrong, because there's excess and there's surplus right-of-way, believe that or not. And because of the nature of this right-of-way, they are no longer allowed to lease it. They actually, once it becomes in that category, they have a year to dispose of it. So we are kind of up against that deadline a little bit. Because of that, MnDOT would actually not allow permanent improvements to be built. They can no longer allow us to sort of build something there without a lease in place, and we're about ready to go into construction. So that's why this is coming to you today, and it's also why it's coming to you with the caveat to buy for no more than $240,000 because of that FHWA approval that is taking place. I am pleased to report that I received an email today at 2:00 p.m. from MnDOT with a revised offer letter of $100,000. So they've received approval from FHWA to significantly reduce the price of this property, and we'll be able to get it for $100,000 rather than the $240,000 that was presented to you in the resolution. If we don't purchase, if the MPRB doesn't purchase this, the next step is that MnDOT will sell it at auction and probably for development. A multifamily property could be built at this site. So really quickly, just money. I wanted to give kind of a quick overview of the parkland, the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund in the Whittier neighborhood, because there's been a few allocations out of there, and I just want to be clear where all those came from. So you can see in this chart, there were some authorizations in the 2021 CIP for the Whittier Park improvements, the Midtown Greenway ramp at the Sioux Line Garden, and then again in 2022 for the Clinton Field Park courts. So in total to date, the board has allocated $1.22 million out of the Whittier neighborhood portion of this. In Resolution 2024-106, which you passed tonight, that's another $150,000. You'll note here I have $240,000, but that number would become $100,000. So the total available after the resolutions, as things stand right now, would be $18,000 plus $140,000, right? So literally I didn't get a chance to update the slides. And then in addition, the Midtown Greenway ramp, it's important to note that that money has not been expended. The Whittier and Clinton money is being spent now, so it would be hard to kind of claw that back into the fund, but the Midtown Greenway ramp, none of that has been expended. So here's kind of where the park dedication funding sits within that particular neighborhood. And the next steps would be if the full board approves this resolution, we'll notify MnDOT of offer acceptance. They have a fairly streamlined process to go to closing after that. There aren't any purchase agreements or anything like that. It's basically kind of a deed transfer. We would, you notice my third bullet, we would hold a final closing until FHWA makes its determination on price reduction, but that's already just happened. And then we would, of course, notify you if there were a price reduction, which there is. And then we would begin construction. So that's where things stand right now. I will stand for questions, Chair Abeni.
Thank you for that. That was very interesting and good news. So I would say that the competition for the land I'm sensitive to that, but we also know we have a gap and a need in that location. That's, I think, important. So I see Commissioner Alper.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for that presentation. It was really informative and answered a couple questions that I had about the lease option. I'm curious if you happen to know, and we can talk offline later if you'd prefer, but I'm curious if the rules around land conveyance that MnDOT abides by were in place when the freeway system was built, and if our park system was, does it go both ways? Was the park system paid fair market value for the land that was taken from our parks? Thinking about, like Murphy Square Park or Parade, that sort of raised a red flag about the how land conveyance works now, and maybe these rules were put into place in order to ensure that if land is acquired now for building new roads, that fair market value is paid, but then it would go the other way too, that fair market value is, that we, in order, then would also have to pay fair market value for these. So I'm just curious if that rule was in place, because that feels, if you happen to know.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Alper, I'm certainly no expert on this, but what I can say is when the freeway system was being built in Minneapolis and elsewhere, but in Minneapolis in particular, it kind of became a testing ground for the Federal Highway Administration's rights to take property in general, including parkland. And Council Rice may know this history too, but there was a case in elsewhere and a case in Minneapolis that both were simultaneously going all the way to the Supreme Court about park takings. And that ultimately led to the 4F powers that exist in the Transportation Act of 1966. I think it could be fair to say that it would be hard to pinpoint whether all of the parkland was taken at fair market value. And I can also say that part of MnDOT's appeal to FHWA was to try to right some of those historical wrongs by reducing price to have this become a full public park rather than a leased space.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear, because I'm about writing historical norms, because I highly doubt that it was taken at fair market value from the park system. So, I mean, I'm going to vote for it tonight, but I wonder if the price should be more like $1 instead of $100,000.
Council Rice has
If I could
something to
just
add.
make, I would agree with what Mr. Arvidsson said, but under the federal constitution, you cannot take property without just compensation. So to the extent that MnDOT ever took property from the park board, which they did, which Highway 55 was a case, and they've taken other property, there was always the issue of just compensation under a constitutional standard, and that applies when you're taking property without any sort of consensual agreement. I wouldn't know the history of what the Federal Highway Administration has done about either turn back or selling property. They may have some more discretion if it's an adversarial taking. But I would say generally if there was taking of park board property at any point without the consent of the park board under the federal and state constitutions, they would have had to pay the fair market value of land. That's just a constitutional requirement. Now, how fair market is determined depends on appraisals or comparable situations. I think when you come to parkland, however, and that's what precipitated 4F was, it's taking parkland is like not simply a real estate transaction. You're talking about taking something that is almost invaluable, at least in my opinion. And that was what the view of the prior boards were. I mean, what is the value of a park or parkland, or, you know, that was the essential issue on Highway 55 that Mr. Arvidsson referred to. That was an action where the State Highway Department under federal auspices was taking parkland, and what's the value put on Minnehaha State Park or the Minnehaha Parkway? I mean, can you actually quantify that in terms of a dollar? I mean, that's the issue. Or we even had that with recently in Commissioner Schaefer's district with the Kenilworth.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Alper, do you have further questions or comments?
No, I think I'll hold tight. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Director Arvidsson for that really great overview. I really appreciated it. I want to give a little background on, and I'm very excited to hear that it's reduced from 240 to 100,000, because to be honest, as the park commissioner looking at this area, we have Washburn Fair Oaks coming forward, we have Clinton Field still in need, we don't know what's happening with Sioux Line, and the skate park is not going to get built with these funds even that we're allocating here today. We're purchasing the land and we're doing the playground, but we're not going to be able to do the skate park. And this is a community that's been without their park, obviously, since 2019. And it is, in 2021, was an area of concentrated poverty. And so this piece of Whittier, kind of to your point about how Whittier is kind of different. So originally, I had inquired about possibly using land acquisition fund for this, 100,000, just because I know, obviously, 240 is different than 100. So now there is some potentially that the community, if they decide to do so, allocate for either another park project or the skate park. But it's going to be another hardship for the community to have two construction projects where they've already lived through one on their back door for the last 5 years. Now we're going to be doing the playground, and then down the road, the skate park. So I know there's been things that have changed in the middle of that process for you in that process. But I guess I would be open to, I'm going to be fully supporting this. I'm great to hear that it is a reduction in price. But I would just ask the question, is there any potential to use some of the land acquisition funds? Because this isn't land acquisition. We've been leased it, so it doesn't feel like it's a new one. But that would give some more cushion to potentially use for a skate park or another project that the community has coming forward.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, certainly the land acquisition fund would be an eligible source for this. I unfortunately don't know offhand what the balance is in that fund. I know it's something that's contributed to with each budget cycle. The reason why I suggest and recommend park dedication funds in this case is that we do have land acquisition priorities within our system, most notably along the missing link and in the upper river, where those park connectivity pieces have never been built, and those are identified as priority acquisitions in our comprehensive plan. And in many of those neighborhoods, there is no park dedication available. So we would have to use land acquisition fund and other outside funds, like we've sought LCCMR funding for acquisition on the river in order to be able to fill that gap, because we don't have park dedication. And in this neighborhood, there happens to be a healthy amount of park dedication, and that's why I've suggested using that fund in this case.
But it would be down to 100,000 after this, correct? 118 or whatever.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, the total available now as modified would be $158,000.
Yep.
Would remain unallocated by the board.
Right. That's just my feeling is, I'm just wondering if there's any cost benefit to trying to do this skate park and Central at the same time and utilizing, multiple contractors for projects. I'm just trying to be creative in our thinking here, because this community has sat for so long with this park, and I just think it would be, the design that they're hoping to build is like a bowl style, which should be something unique to our system, and really would be a draw similar to what Elliott Park has been established. It should be kind of a regional and bring a lot more activity to this space. So between now and 2 weeks, I'm fully supportive of this and want to say thank you for your work. But if between now and the next 2 weeks, I can dialogue with staff if there's any other ideas, I think the Whittier neighborhood would be thrilled.
Thank you. Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, Vice President Benny, or Chair Benny. I'm not on this committee, but I appreciate the time to speak. That's really exciting that we're going to be able to get it for less money that we were allocating out of the park dedication. I would strongly advise us to allocate that towards the skate park. I would also like, I'm not on this committee, but I know that this will be coming before the board. It would be helpful to understand the reasoning behind a playground in that space versus a skate park. Or maybe I need to look at the designs a little bit more. Yep. So just wanting to make sure that we can allocate and prioritize possibly the skate park over the playground, because I know that after I had talked to Commissioner Alper about this a little bit, and there are some high levels of air pollution next to the freeway, that maybe a better use of these funds, which now could possibly be 300,000, which would get us really close to constructing a pretty unique feature in our system in a place that might activate the space for a broader range of the community, and I'm talking age ranges. So I'd like for us to consider that moving forward over the next 2 weeks, and I'll be looking closely at the designs and possibly thinking about how we might be able to consider that as an amendment. But I think that the priority right now for this community, and this is not my community, but this is what I have heard, and I know that the Central Park, the Central Skate Park has been an issue, and that's fairly close to that neighborhood, that it would be a really wise or good place for us to allocate funds that we've just been sort of gifted for that purpose.
Thank you.
Chair Benny, if I may,
Yes.
I think because this is really new information around this dollar change, we can chat about it internally, because there's a couple moving parts. It's Director Swenson and Project Manager Hailstone, and we need to think about how that all works with some potential additional money. I certainly take your thoughts to heart. We'll discuss it and maybe have an additional report in a couple of weeks. It's the best I can promise at this point. It's very new.
Okay. Well, thank you for your work on this. It's pretty exciting. So I think let's go ahead and vote on Resolution 2024-109. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution passes. And with that, I will adjourn the Planning Committee meeting.
Yeah.
Just before the 3-hour mark. Interesting, interesting.
What's our over under?
I mean,
Dancing lights.